Hey, Scary King here at La Foray. Again, we did a little chat the other day at the weekend, so this is coming out a few days late. But we just wanted to cover a few things that's sort of going on. A couple of other things we wanted to bring up. Something to do with some movies and the usual sort of stuff and so on. But mainly more to do with how people perceive things, and when they're on this path, I won't use the words that they like to use, but this path of, let's just say, discovery, but they're not maybe quite there yet. And I'm not saying that we are, because I know we're not. Little talk about emails, email platforms and stuff like that. The Smithsonian. A little bit about a film that I loved called My Man Godfrey with Carol Lombard. And a few other bits and pieces. And a thing that we watched the other day, me and me old mum watched the other day, about Halifax, Nova Scotia, where they apparently buried a lot of people they pulled out of the Atlantic. But anyway, bear with us. We do waffle on a bit in this one, and the connection wasn't brilliant because we were doing it through the old T-gram. Here we go for another one. Anyway, hey, Scary King here at La Foray. With the old Serge again. All right, mate.
Gee.
Right, hang on, I've got to turn you
Hello,
up.
mon frère, bonjour.
I've got to turn you up a bit. That's it, all of a sudden it's gone a bit quiet. Hang on. Right, here we go. So anyway, it's the 17th of August already, hey?
Yeah. I just had a news flash.
I just had a news.
Come up, we'll talk about the other bit in a minute, so
Yeah.
You can edit this bit. I've just had one of the things come up that Zelensky, the old poison dwarf,
The old green dwarf.
the old green hornet, is going to fly to Washington.
Oh, right, okay.
As Mertz, whoever Mertz is, says that the US is ready to be part of the Ukraine security guarantees after the failure of Trumpster and Mr. Putin's Alaskan rendezvous, where they failed to come up with a peace treaty. I was going to talk about that one, but that one just flashed up just as I was looking through the other bits as you
Brilliant.
were booting this up. So that's quite
Brilliant.
a funny one.
Yeah. So, anyways, what we wanted to do was we had a bit of a weekend, didn't we, mate? We had we had a what it's called the Moule Frite, the mussels and chips. Last Friday night. On the Saturday we had the Meshwi, which is the lamb roast, so we had a bit of a bender. And then this weekend we had two in one day. So we were at our neighbours, our voisins, Gilles and Ghislaine, for a big lunch with just the neighbours, and then we went to Mark's Moule Frite. So we were doing a lot of talking during this time about various bits and bobs. And because it's been very, 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 very hot, we've been sort of hanging out downstairs in the studio, me and Mum, and we watched a thing the other day, and I told you about it, didn't I? And this kind of triggered us off on a little adventure, so to speak. Now, it was to do with Halifax, Nova Scotia, and a burial ground to do with a certain giant boat that sank in the Atlantic some considerable years ago. And it was quite a good documentary. A lot of the footage in it that was made by this guy I thought he did a brilliant job, but a lot of it was, it was obviously the old, the new tech, which we're calling 19, right? First and ninth letter of the alphabet. Anyway, so I told you about it, and you sort of dived straight in there and started looking at some of the old movies. But the reason that we want
a couple of really good ones, weren't there, that you put beyond?
The reason we wanted to look at it was not because, again, we don't know anything. We know nothing, right? Okay, so you can shoot us down in flames or whatever, but like we've said, if you believe that the narrative is a giant lie right across the board, then you also have to understand and believe that the things that have happened in the past also are a giant lie right across the board, right? And it doesn't mean these things didn't happen, it just means that the way they tell you they happened is not necessarily a fact. So we watched this thing on this thing in Halifax, where they brought in anybody they found left bobbing around in the ocean. And the whole story in itself was a little bit bizarre because, again, one story was bigging up the White Star Line. The other story, which was about the crew and the people on, that literally had the shit kicked out of them when they managed to get back, it paints two different pictures. So that kind of started us off on, again, looking into, because it's a fascinating subject. We loved the movies. We loved the Night to Remember, the original. And we also pulled up, which me and Mum watched, we watched the Raise the Titanic movie.
Yes.
And
1980.
Jason Robards, right? And it was actually a really good film. But once again, it was to do with espionage, it was to do with government trickery and all that kind of stuff. But again, they threw the numbers in, didn't they? So anyway, I'm gonna hand this over to you, mate. So you can start us off on this one.
Where are we going to start? We're going to start with the stuff that we looked at from the 16th, which I thought was really interesting before we move on to the other little bits, because I thought it was really poignant with the different changes and the stuff that's coming in. We were sat there having coffee, weren't we, out the front? And I'd already spoken to Mum about it when I looked into this biosecurity alert. Now, we have hornets out. I've been stung by hornets.
Yeah.
This thing flagged up that there was a major alert in Ireland, it said Ireland, after an Asian hornet was sighted and subsequently captured. One yellow-legged Asian hornet in the Cork area of Southern Ireland. And there's a really long... Well, there's quite a few articles on it about Asian hornets and when they're active. And we have hornets out here. We've had hornets out here for years, haven't we?
Oh, yeah. It's nothing new.
Years and years. Different ones. Red-legged, yellow-legged, everything. And we always get the warnings and everything else. But to cut a long story short, it was basically, it turned around and said that there was obviously a significant threat to bees, honey, and pollinization with this risk of hornets. But there's no risk to people, when I said to you, unless it fucking stings you. Remember when I got stung last year by 2 hornets down in the tin shed?
The old tin shed.
Down in the old tin shed down the bottom. But the thing that made me laugh was not just the article about hornets. We know hornets exist. We know that they can damage pollination and they're not good for bees and honey and all the other types of things. But the double embossed text that said, "What should I do if you spot a hornet?" And the National Biodiversity Data Centre Alien Watch Reporting Portal. Now, what a name that is.
Portal.
What a name that is.
There's the portal again.
There we go. Alien Reporting Portal is where you can, if you sight one of these hornets, a yellow-legged one from Asia, report the information. And according to the National Museum, National Parks and Wildlife Services, the NPWS, these are great, a rapid response unit was sent out to locate this one hornet, which was captured in Cork on the 12th of August. And since that, because of the threat to bees and honey and pollinization in Ireland, there's been a new task force which has been established, called the Asian Hornet Management Group. And it was just like, well, there's stuff coming out about aliens and stuff like that. Now, the reason why I bring this up, because I think we mentioned it, or you mentioned it in the last podcast that we did, about the radioactive wasps.
Oh yeah, that they found at a military base, an abandoned military base.
That was brilliant. A military base, and that one really sort of, really sort of stuck into my head with that type of thing. And it's like you've got all this information that comes up, and then there was the one underneath that I spoke to you about before we move on to Titanic.
The Titanic.
And I won't mention, Titanic. We won't mention the airline because obviously that's not really good. But it's one of Europe's cheapest airlines now. That are putting in all of their Airbuses what's called FPO, Flight Path Optimization instruments that are from Stalk Jet's Fly Guide, which are, the number 19. We'll use it number 19.
Yeah.
Pieces of machinery that will analyse data from pilots and aircraft and all that type of stuff using flight data and algorithms that will learn and be able to control and maintain aircraft and passengers' welfare and all that type of stuff. So there we go. We're already now talking about all the other types of things that are being controlled by the 19.
Gradually slipped in, bit by bit.
Just slip one in. They were the two main things that came up, apart from obviously the old Trumpster and the Putin thing. But I thought that was really good, and you got me onto these two films, which
what I was going to say,
which I've watched.
What I was going to say first before we go into, because the sinking vessel thing is quite a big one, and I know it's old. You know, it's going over old ground. But the point, like I said earlier, is it's not about trying to evaluate or find the loopholes in these things, but is to basically say, because we were talking about this earlier, weren't we, mate, about what is the purpose. If we're talking about stuff, there has to be an end result. And the end result to all these conversations, like I used to do with little Sarah, I know she listens to these, but big shout out to little Sarah, is that... if we understand that everything that they tell you is bullshit, or they take some truth and then they twist it into something else, then you know you're basically on the right track. But one of the things we're talking about, all the numbering stuff, and I know that, again, Matt from Quantum talks about this all the time, about how there's a big... like a big, I don't know what you would call it, that controls all of these things. So when you start thinking about something, things change automatically. And I understand all that, right? But all the numbering stuff, you were just seeing it all the time, right? So anyway, I sort of lost a little bit there because my mate James sent me a message that popped up right in the middle of this.
It's the numerology.
Yeah.
Now, I've looked at some things that people have put up on their tube and other things, and we review it, because that's where you get certain parts of information from, and there's so many things out there. But the numerology is really important, particularly when you look at numbers in regards to the religious content and why people have linked certain things to past information.
Yeah, and certain dates.
But I think once I've got, as I said to you, I've got some friends here that have already started seeing things in a different light because of just discussions. Whether they believe it or not, I'm not actually too sure. But my eyes were open some time ago, as you know. And now, is it because we're being shown it? Is it because it was always there? Is it because our brains are thinking that? Well, we don't know. We don't know. No. But it's there for people to see, and you just have to look at these things. And it's like you said about the taking of an image, and it's very, very important. Anyone that's listening, it's really important that if you see something and you think, well, that's a good link to that, and that's this, and blah, 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 and there's a bit of numerology behind this and the reason why they're saying it, screenshot it.
Yeah, before it disappears.
Screenshot it, before it disappears, because there's a very, 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 there's a very, very strong possibility that image or whatever might get edited. However they do it. You just have to take the 33 to 27, and we won't go into that because we talked about that, but just the change of numbers from a photograph on a helmet that the old Trumpster is kissing.
Exactly.
And Titanic was the one that you said,
What I was going to say first off, because I wanted to bring this in the last one, I didn't do it, right? One of my favourite films, which is an old film, old black and white film, is called My Man Godfrey, right? And it's about a guy who's a down and out bum who lives down by the, the river in New York. And he ends up becoming a butler for this family of very wealthy, crazy people and so on. And the girl in it is played by Carol Lombard, right? Her character is just fantastic, right? She's complete scatterbrain and whatever. We'll call her a her. Hopefully she is a her or was a her. Anyway, so I typed in Carol Lombard I didn't know anything about Carole Lombard. So anyway, I love this movie. I highly recommend it for anybody, as long as you get through the first 10 minutes with the crazy mother-in-law, but it's brilliant, right? Anyway, Carole Lombard got killed in an aircraft crash. And Carole Lombard also was married to Gone with the Wind Clark Gable. Okay, so you've got like a real major league actor of the day. They called Carole Lombard like the queens of the golden screen of film comedy, because it was often in these sort of somewhat comedy movies. So anyway, so there's this plane crash and Carole Lombard gets killed. And how old was Carole Lombard when she got killed? Off the top of your head, Serge.
33.
33, right?
33.
There you go, right. So anyway, the version of My Man Godfrey that I've got now, I don't know if this is the original full long version, whatever it is, with the introduction and everything. It is 1 hour 33 minutes long. Funny that, isn't it? So you got these two numbers there together, and people are like, "Yeah, you're going out your mind and everything." It's like, nah, not really. But isn't that funny? So I started taking some look at some pictures and things like that. And of course, you can find a couple of pictures, not very many, but a classic one which I put on one of the other videos. There's old Carole with the old one eye covered up, with the hair hanging over the eye. Not just like, oh, my hair is long and it's fallen over my eye, but it's hanging over my eye, right? And you look at that and you go, all right then. So anyway, I did a little bit more research into that. Apparently this plane crashed and Carole Lombard was on her way back from a war bonds event. So what they were trying to do, anybody who knows about that stuff, they were trying to raise money for the war bonds, right, to keep basically killing people, right? So she's on her way back from this event. There's a plane crash. I think it was something like 20 people. There's a load of people were killed in this crash anyway, apparently. Shows this picture of this plane all mullered up. Again, big connection with major league Hollywood actor and so on. And it says in this thing, and you can read up on it, of course it's all a load of bullshit, right? But it says nothing was found, right? Now you've done some of the old researching, not researching, but when you were doing your job, like sifting through all the crap that's left over after an accident and stuff like that. It says the only thing that was found was one blonde hair. And you're like, oh, come on, really? The one blonde hair, no skull, no teeth, no shoe shot out through the window. No, one blonde hair, and that's what it says. And then, of course, that reminds us straight away about certain events like Matt's September job application, where a certain place was literally destroyed and they found a passport and a turban or something like that, and all these other things that they keep bringing out where it's not even possible that these things would exist after an inferno, but the things that should exist, because if you look into, say, Indian burials, you know how long it takes for a body to be consumed by fire before it's turned into ashes and so on. But I thought, again, that number thing was really kind of cool, because that's one of the things that we look at. So from that, we can now go into our giant ship sinking in the middle of the Atlantic extravaganza.
Well, I mean, it's just like there's so much information on there, and, you know, it is in his story, apart from the sister ship, of course, from the old White Star, and I'll let you do the old talking about the White Star side of things. You know, the most famous ship that was ever built, the most famous ship that was ever sailed, and the reasons why it was done that, and the way it's portrayed, and the film was a good film.
Oh,
the original films are better.
Oh,
the original films are better,
brilliant.
like we said.
Yeah,
they're much better, and there's nothing against the film, because, you know, we don't want to run down these people that have done years and years of research on this kind of stuff. But there are so many things for me. Particularly, I spent the whole afternoon, the whole evening watching movies and National Geographical reports on their tube. which were very good, and you can view them and you can make your own mind up. The old. It's just something that sprung to mind when you were talking about it. The old Titanic man himself, without mentioning any names. When you put the two initials together, what does it come up with? JC. JC, who was the most famous person in history. Yeah. JC, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Isn't that funny? And, they big him up, whether or not it's the right or wrong thing to do, as being a National Geographical explorer. Not just a film producer and everything else, who's done 33 dives down to Titanic.
Oh, yeah. Let's make the point of this, right? This is the one that Neil caught me with yesterday, Serge caught me with yesterday. He goes, so how about this?
I'm going to talk about numbers.
Starting off,
not so much all the information.
No. Do the numbery thing with old JC, obviously.
Yeah, 33 dives. There's one of the top analyst that's done 6 dives. There's things that took 36 months to do. There's other things that took 9 months to do, and it's all to do with this connotation around the number 3. Now, why? Yeah. Why is that in there? So we'll go back to it with numbers. Okay, so the Titanic allegedly sunk on the 14th of April. No one says it didn't. The 14th of April, 1912. The video or the clip that I watched on the National Geographic thing said that it left on the 10th of April 2000. Here we go. It left on the. I'm looking.
Have a glass of wine, mate. Have a glass of wine.
No. I'm looking at the figures that I've got right in front of me. It left on the 10th of April 1912, and 3 days later, it hit the iceberg. But when you look at the other side, it says it was the 14th of April that it hit the iceberg. So is it 3 days or 4 days?
Yeah, make up your mind.
The actual journey was only meant to take 6 days.
It's the 6 again.
6 days. So there's all the things that that run around all this numerology in regards to 3, 33, 36, 6, 9, and they're pumping it in to the whole side of things. Now, you know the guy's name because I couldn't remember who the guy's name was. That when you watch film A Night to Remember, 1968, with Kenneth Moore.
Yeah.
Which has now been enhanced into colour, hasn't it? They show the White Star organisation with some people in there talking about how many eggs have been booked for the journey, how much this and that, blah, 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 blah. And this guy walks into the office and says that there are 332 first-class passengers booked on to the voyage to New York. Not 333.
No.
Now, from what you've looked into, there should have been 333 first-class passengers because there was one person who allegedly didn't get on board.
That's right. And actually, it was that film, I think it was made in the 50s. It was earlier than 68. But anyway, only so I don't have to type it in. But so as they say, the story is that another character who was supposed to be one of these super wealthy pulled out at the last minute, right? And that's how the story goes, so it would have made this amount of numbers. Anybody who knows this knows the name of this clown that didn't get on the boat or whatever, but actually also took, I think it was had some art exhibits or something like that, statues or something that they were taking to New York, and of course they pulled that all off at the last minute. And then the story is that all these possibility guys out there like us are going, oh yeah, well, he was all part of it, and maybe he was, but it was kind of, again, the number system. It's not possible. I mean, in our entire lives, apart from getting to the age of 33 or 66 or whatever, those numbers never appeared until the last, I would say, since the nonsense in 2020, right? It just appears all the time. But yeah, very interesting, very interesting. Yeah,
I mean, we're not saying things haven't been raised from the surface, and it's a good fake if you can put all this fake stuff on to show that's been going on for over 70 years now.
Yeah.
Plus and stuff like that. So they reckon there's over 5,560 items that have been raised from the surface, primarily away from I think it said 2,000 metres between where the Titanic
broke in half,
allegedly split in two and broke in half. But when you look at the two films and you look at other things, people said that the Titanic never split in half. And then there's something I talked to you about earlier on today from a guy called I thought it said Thayer, but it's Thayer, Jack Thayer, Thyre, and there's one of his great nephews on this National Geographic documentary talking about the report that he did, and he was one of the last people to jump off the stern. It is the stern, isn't it? The stern of the boat as it was sinking down, saying that it split in two. Jack, doesn't that remind you of something from a film? Yeah. Oh, Jack, you know, blah, 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 and all the rest of the stuff. And no one's saying it didn't happen, but no. It's very interesting when you look at things, and specifically with the numbers, because there's different information, and it's just like, was there 2,000? Was there 2,022? Was there 2,222? And there's a guy that spent most of his life researching passengers and stuff like that. Great documentaries on there. You know, we're led to believe there were 2,222 passengers on board the Titanic when it sets out before its disastrous voyage. But there were only enough life rafts to sustain 1,1,200 people, which would have breached the security and breached the insurance guidelines for the old Star company. So again, that's, you know,
well with that when they talk about, you know, they talked about this unsinkable ship. So let's just say, all right, it was unsinkable, but what if it caught fire and the whole thing burned up, but it never sank? You still have to get off, right? You still got to get off, right? So it's ridiculous.
I mean, the point that I made with you was like when you look at the films and you look at the side of things with Mr. Andrews, the designer, that the first three holds could sustain being flooded and being pumped out.
That's right.
Three. There we go. There's the number three. Not the fourth or the fifth. If it went over to the fifth, it was going to be no good.
That was the end of it.
And it said that they estimated that the open gash that was created in the hull was 300 feet. 300 feet. There's another three coming in. You know, so, and it was going to be an hour and a half. An hour and a half is how many minutes, right? Maybe I'm going crazy.
No, but it's true. It's true. But you know,
it's just like the auction house in the United Kingdom, and that's part of one of the documentaries that's on there, called Henry Aldridge and Sons, that has a annual memorabilia auction and holds all the world records. Can I say that without making it sound stupid? World records for selling items which were not from the Titanic.
Exactly, yeah.
On the Titanic when it sailed. Yeah. They're from families and people. Though they did say on there on the documentary that there was a postcard that was sent from the Titanic on its maiden voyage. Now, how did they get a postcard that's stamped and pressed from the Titanic?
Very fast pigeon.
Back, which was going to be worth £7,000. And a set of keys from the first class lavatory that never got used, sold for £55,000. And the actual sale of all the memorabilia was over $300,000.
There you go. Yeah. And
nearer $333,000. There we go.
Here we go again.
So, you know, it's like, do I dream these things, or do I?
No. Well, you know, like we said earlier on, the point is we know nothing about this certain event other than the fact that there was a couple of films out that were really good and we really enjoyed them. And then, of course, you know, like back in the day when I was in England, and I'll say this, when I was married, I went to see the Decrepio version of Titanic because I fell in love with Rose, right? And of course, I changed my attitude when I found out that the old Winslet probably isn't who it said it is. But we won't go there with that one. Anyway, but the thing is that the story that was originally, you know, and then when all the old conspirateurs jumped on board, they were talking about certain men that were on the boat they basically got rid of them because they were against the Fed. But what nobody actually says is that if you look at the list of robber barons, what they called the robber barons, basically the crooks of the world, if they were actually crooks, maybe they weren't, I don't know, but the crooks of the world, they were listed as part of that. So were they really getting rid of their own, or was it a giant ritual? Now, as we've said before, when you look at that other boat that was supposed to be available, that was hanging about and never bothered to sail for like 15 minutes to go and see if everything was okay.
Yeah,
10 miles away or something, right? Yeah, 10 miles away.
10 miles away, but they shut down the old communications.
Yeah, exactly, right.
They show it on there.
Yeah.
Because they thought the flares that were going up were fireworks and stuff like that, and they were having a big party.
Yeah.
And it's like, well,
again, if you go through any maritime history stuff and everything, there never was before and never has been since a vessel taken out by an iceberg, right? Okay, so that's red flag number one. Red flag number two is that there was a boat pretty near by that never even used the common sense to go and have a look if there was a boat
10 miles. It's not going to take long for
not very long, no.
to travel 10 miles.
Right, so
when you think that the Carpathia...
Yeah.
Right? No, 4.5 hours away the Carpathia was.
Right.
Which is really interesting when you think that allegedly the captain of this vessel that was only 10 miles away, and they were signaling with lamps.
Yeah.
And it was the first. It shows. It says in the thing that it was the first time that the SOS Morse code was used.
Yeah.
Was it? I don't know.
Really?
I don't know. But yeah, very, very interesting.
Yeah. The point with that was, what if that vessel was there? What if that vessel was there specifically to make sure that what was planned actually happened? Right. That's why it was there. That's why it didn't go anywhere. And there's all these stories. The point is with this conversation is not to discredit anybody or anything like that, or say this thing didn't happen or it did happen or whatever, but everybody that looks into this stuff, if they understand and they know and they believe that everything is a giant lie. So we look at the yellow and blue, we look at all these different things that are going on today. Giant lie, giant lie, giant lie, giant lie, right across the board. 2020 nonsense, giant lie, right across the board. There's nothing to say that back in those days they weren't doing exactly the same thing. Of course they were doing, because it's the same people that ran it back then. Yeah. Same people ran it back then. And what you were saying about photographs, when you start looking,
I've looked at about 100 photographs of the workers at the docks, and bearing in mind it took 3 years to build Titanic, 3 years, and over 30,000.
Not 20,000
people worked. No, not 20, 30. 30,000 people to work on Titanic over 3 years. No one's saying it didn't happen. Just these numbers. Why not 40,000 or 50,000 people? Why did it take 3 years, not 2.5 years or 2.75 years or whatever? You know, and things are being sold off at these auctions from family members, from the memorabilia. The thing I spoke to you about is obviously the charity group that still owns at the moment, as far as I can see from all the information, all the memorabilia that's been raised from the ocean floor, which is valued at 20 million at the moment. They're worried about where it might get sold off to. And the old big thing that got chucked in, as I said to you, is that China were allegedly, I'm not even sure.
It's all going to be on AliExpress.
I'm not sure what the date was. Building a Titanic theme park and a museum and all the rest of stuff. And the founding discoverer I'm not going to mention names, but people will know who that will be. He's worried of it all being sold on and stuff like that. But it's no different to all the other things. But the other thing that I found really interesting with all of this was the United Nations Exploration Organisation or Association, or whatever it's called, states that there's over 3 million. There we go, number 3 again. 3 million shipwrecks, right, of historic boats, crafts that have either been found or not found, right, around the world. So it's just like all these numbers that come in, and same we were talking about, without going into names and stuff like that, because obviously we don't want to push the buttons too much. Some of the names of the famous people that were on it, and the way they're portrayed, whether they're the National Geographical ones, the ones that have been compiled by the old JC and all the other types of people and stuff like that, they're all there trying to give information and trying to rebuke each other or support each other and stuff like that. You just have to look at the finances, and I told you about the way that this particular one that I watched yesterday made it sound like, they were the elite. They didn't mention the word X.
No.
They didn't mention the word X, but they said they were the rock stars of 1912.
Yeah.
They had the most expensive jewellery, the most expensive stuff. But there's only 332 of them. Not 333, because one of them, as we know, decided that he wasn't going to be very well and didn't get on board, and all his artwork
went to holiday in France.
Put on Titanic, never went there. But again, that's just another story.
Well,
yesterday that was a big thing, and I reviewed a lot of the information that I looked at yesterday and linked it to some other things that I've looked at very quickly. About numerology. Now, I spoke to you about a particular bank in the United Kingdom introducing a new rule for depositing notes and coins.
Right, yeah.
But it's on a couple of the UK sites, and about these what they're going to call pay points.
Oh yeah,
across the United Kingdom, where you can go and you can deposit notes and coins, similar to like the Mondial and the Amazon points and stuff like that, where you can deposit up to £300 in one go.
Not 200.
£600 in a month, and £30,000 in a year.
Yeah.
What is it with this 3?
Yeah. Well, hang on. Hold that thought. I need to go and get a glass of wine. I'll be right back. Well, we just went and grabbed some vino, because they like to be kino. Anyway, so talking about see these deposit in money again. There you are. There's the number system again, right?
Yeah, I mean it's like, who wants to go and stand in a bank and deposit cash and deposit coins? But it's just a numerology. Now, 33, 6, 9. 33,
11,
30,000, 330 continuously.
Well, what I was going to say on that before we drift off from the old the sinking of the very large vessel. One of the reasons that we looked into it again was because we watched this. I said we watched this thing with this guy. He was very good actually, but he obviously is he's a total nut on this sort of stuff. It's not just that subject. He looks into all these all to do with nautical stuff and so on. What this particular show was about Halifax, Nova Scotia, and the buried people where they recovered all the bodies and so on and so forth. And talking about pictures, and again, big shout out to Whisper Jack. That we didn't sort of really look too deep into it, but once you start looking at some of these pictures, you see that most of these pictures have been doctored in one way or another, right? So some of the pictures that he was showing, some of the stuff he was putting up, he'd used the old first and ninth letter for the alphabet, the 19 to create these things. But what was interesting was, and again, I'm not going to go into it because there's too much to put into an hour or whatever it is. But the one that really stuck with me was this story about this little boy. They found this little boy bobbing around in the ocean. He didn't have a life jacket on. Nobody knew who he was. I'm sure that was probably the case, and very sad. Poor little fella, right? But these two guys that pulled this young fella out of the water were so distraught. It really affected them quite badly. So when they took the body back, finally got the body back, and you can read up on all this nonsense about freezing some people, putting them in ice, some people just being put under tarps, some people being put in wooden coffins, all that kind of stuff, right? How they were able to find all these bodies in the first place seems a little bit odd in my opinion, because as you know, the sea moves quite rapidly and whatever. Anyway, they found this little fella and they take him back. Nobody knew who he was, and they took the bodies to an ice rink. There was an ice rink apparently, and they put all the bodies in the ice rink to keep them cold, and everybody got claimed except this little fella. He was just left there on his own. So these two blokes and the crew of this ship decided that they were going to honour this little fella, and they got given a load of money by one of those rich families because they found the body of I can't remember who it was now, one of those knobheads that caused all these problems in the first place, right? The son gave them, I think it was 100 grand or something, so they got 2.5 grand a piece, which was a lot of money back in those days. So what they decided to do was buy all these flowers, pay for this burial for this poor little fella, right? And sounds all nice and kumbaya, doesn't it? And they were all distressed. They all went to the church. Yeah. Nobody could get in the church. And then they had a brass plaque apparently made that they laid on the chest of this little boy in his coffin, and it said, "Here lies our babe." Our little baby, right? And you go, that's nice, isn't it? Very nice. But why would you put the plaque inside the coffin? You wouldn't. You put it on the memorial, right? The granite. A bit of stone or whatever it is, right? But no, they didn't do that. So anyway, they bury the little boy, and then they show the gravestone, which is again, of course, it's a the typical thing that you see, with the pyramid on the top type of thing. But the text that was written was not anything like what these people were talking about. It just says, "Here lies an unknown child found." It didn't say, "Here lies our babe, the unknown child, in memory from the crew of the something." All nice and everything. It was just completely blatant and right, nothing like the story that went with it. And I said to Mum, I go, that doesn't make any sense, because you wouldn't do that. If you were paying for that and you really felt heartfelt, you would make sure that something very memorable was put on there for this little fella. It was, and you can check it out. It was as a blatant, just stuck there,
It's like one of the photographs that was sold allegedly by the family of the person that passed away. Was a young guy in the 1900s that was the first person to die in the construction of Titanic. And it's a photograph that was sold at that auction house that I've already spoke about. And I've written down the family name. I'm not going to be disrespectful. I don't know. I wasn't there. Stuff like that. But it's ironic, isn't it, that there's one photograph of him, only one photograph of him sold at this auction by the surviving family, and he died at 19.
There you go, see?
19.
Same old shit. And
there we go with that number that we said that we'll talk about. He died at 19. He didn't die at 22 or 23 or 30. No. He died at 19. Yeah. A photograph of somebody. Now, like you've said before, we've watched so many things with the other guys that we follow that talk about the 19 and how easy it is to generate these images. When you look at, like I said to you, the construction of Titanic and a sister ship and other ships where the photos aren't realistic enough for the time period.
No.
When you look at things that are protruding out of people's arms and what they're, the hammer is in a position
It's not natural, right?
That it would not be possible. And no one's saying that, the way that they were able to put these rivets into the metal, somebody managed to find out a way and heat them up and do all these things. But, how hot did they have to do this? And I looked at some where they were showing the testing of how they implemented these rivets in there and looked at photographs. It's like, no one can hold a hammer in that position.
No.
It's impossible. Why? It's not natural.
It's like we said about these other things when we had that, a little bit of a heated discussion with a friend of ours about the yellow and blue. Why would you need to use faked pictures? And you being a photographer, when they've staged 3 parts into a picture and then taken a new screenshot of it, right? There's no reason to do that.
Some of the videos of the dock workers at the construction of Titanic and construction of other big vessels and stuff like that, and they put them in. And like I said to you, some of the pictures allegedly of the boats that were released from Titanic with the people in there before the Carpathia picked them up. Well, they're done from the sky.
Oh yeah.
There was no one there.
No.
In an aeroplane, photographing these people being rescued from the ocean. And I don't think they were taken from the boat. I wasn't there, but I don't think they were taken from the boat. Again, these people that emphasise all these things use images, as we know from previous experiences, that are there for the propaganda side of things.
Yeah. Well, as I said, back in the day...
Don't.
Yeah, back in the day when I was totally into that, and if you remember, I got like an old newspaper, so-called reproduction. Somebody gave me that for a birthday present. I got the book, all that kind of crap, right? I wasn't really that much.
I've got loads of stuff.
Oh yeah, I was into Rose. Yeah. That's why I like the film, because I was into Rose, right? Shameably so, but I was into Rose, and that's why I like the film. And I went the first time that movie was on. I went with Spence and a bunch of real rock and rollers, right? I won't mention who I went with, but from big bands. We were all like in tears, like none of us. No, I'm not crying, right? No. And like Bill Burr said, he goes, "Oh, it's such a romantic movie, wasn't it?" Bill Burr goes, "No, it wasn't." He goes, "Why? Because all the fucking guys died. It was a horror movie, right?" But when you look at
sorry, I like the one on A Night to Remember, where you've got the guys playing the violins and the orchestra that are there, and it's like, let's play this, and they put that in. So the old JC, as I'll call him, has taken all that information and put it into that thing, and all this stuff that's now coming up about
he robbed it.
Like I said to you, it's just how do they know that there was a gash 300 feet through the iceberg? How do they know that it went to this? Because it was recorded and it was written down, and that's what they assumed had happened, and that's information that is there, and there's evidential stuff. Well, where's the evidence?
Yeah, it's assumptions again, isn't it? And this is what we said earlier on. And what I was going to say about the we had a bit of a delay in there, so it was jumping around a bit. But what I was going to say is when I was totally into that, of course, that's a long time ago. So we were talking, I don't know, what's it, 30 years ago now, I suppose. That I'd seen a thing where it said that some of those pictures of the boats with the rescued people were actually pictures that were taken on the lake in St James's Park, and that they had to stage some of these pictures to show people because there was nobody there actually snapping pictures at the time. Now was that real? I don't know, but that I remember that. So that again, that was a staged picture. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, whatever. But again, one of the points with this is, When I was watching this thing the other day with Mum talking about Halifax, they gave this impression, you see, that the White Star, of course it's got the star, which is the pentagram, and it's the 5-pointed star, and then they talk about how there was a government involvement and insurance scams and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, that's all possible and whatever. All possible, right? But what they show in various videos and documentaries where people are trying to uncover things, they say that the crew, what was left of the crew, were marched off when they arrived, and they were treated like shit, and they were stuck in these rooms, and they were made to sign secrecy orders and all this kind of stuff. They'd lose their jobs, their families would starve to death. And then you're supposed to believe that the White Star Line created a trust fund that kept the memorial of the people that died, that they recovered and brought back, in Halifax, Nova Scotia, right? Well, those two stories don't add up. You're either good or you're bad, right? So anyway, they kept all these things. In the first year, they had these wooden stumps apparently put in the ground, which then got changed into these sort of granite marble, whatever they are, little blocks and so on. There's no proof that anybody's actually lying under the ground there. I know somebody will say, "Oh, don't be so stupid," but there is no proof. They have not scanned it to show that any. It's like the war graves, with nobody even. Everybody just walks over them, whatever. But anyway, that aside, right? But I think, like we talked about earlier on, I think that a lot of these things are a ritual, like with the cenotaph in England, on the Memorial Day, the Remembrance Day. And I think that this organisation, whoever they were, this was one of their. It was a ritual. It was a little bit like the September job application of Matt's, where they took down these two rather large buildings and now stuck a big black box right bang in the middle. The same as that, like I said, when they do Remembrance Day and they have the red reefs. Now I know why they have the red reefs, and they're all there smug, smiling away because they were the ones that caused the death of all these people in the first place. Because normal people don't do that. And also, I think the White Star Line, which of course is a red flag with a white star on it, this is their ritual. This was their thing. This was their job application. This was their whatever you want to call it. Maybe it was. But I also think was quite funny, changing the subject just a little, and we saw this yesterday on another channel, which we've been watching over the years now, and it was about the Smithsonian. Those crooks. The Smithsonian is now under investigation, right, by the US government. Now, it's under investigation for what? I don't know what it's under investigation for. But anyway, it came up, it popped up, it said the Smithsonian, which is basically, this giant holding tank for everything that's been stolen from every country around the world, apparently, is now under investigation. But it's what is funny about that, and this was on Michelle Gibson's channel, and she's going to do some looking into it, but how can you be investigating something that you already run? Because they already run that. And it reminded me straight away of the first Independence Day when Bill Pullman suddenly goes, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, so we've had this stuff hidden away for years, in Area 51. He goes, "How did we not know about that?" And he goes, "Well, you kind of did know about it, but we just never told you the full story." It's a little bit like that. But apparently they're now under investigation.
It's Paul all over again.
Of course it is, yeah. Yeah, it's little Paul.
It's Paul all over again. I love the way you always remember that. A little clip from Paul where he says about, about.
Yeah. Why do you look exactly like we expected you to look? And he goes, "Well, that's because you've been spoon-fed my image on lunchboxes, movies, and everything so you don't have a spaz attack when you finally meet me, right?" And that's what that is kind of what they do. So you in the last few years, you've had the investigation into a certain island, which is a load of rubbish. You've had the investigation into a certain rapper and all his freaky artist friends, which is also a load of rubbish. And now they're going to do an investigation into the Smithsonian, because people have been talking about the Smithsonian. How do they remain secret? How has nobody ever broken in there and stolen anything? And so on. There's another distraction, you see? Another distraction from the historical point of view, But I think I think all those things, again, anybody listens into, I know Sarah's going to listen to this, and a couple of other pods. We like to have a little bit of a ramble on, and anybody who wants to talk to us, by all means, please do. One of the things that really frustrates me, and again, we spoke about this yesterday, was that these certain movements that you know, not bowel movements, but certain movements, who talk about, you know, this is a con, don't trust anybody, and then they use certain words. We won't go into it, but they use certain words in their presentations. You go, oh, come on, really? You ruined it by using that one word, because that means you still buy into a narrative, don't you?
Say it because you're looking at things like as I said,
So anybody,
the people that I say.
Anybody
say it's a planet.
Well,
is it a planet? A planet. What's the word? Planet. A plane.
Yeah, put a
plane with a T on the end of it. Is it flat? Is it round? It's like the people that emphasise.
I will not use a term of any kind.
No, because
that is pushed out.
The people, what you're saying, the people that do, that put these things out that we listen to, you know, and we're not talking about the other ones that are on the same the same plane as us, right? But the other ones that talk, the other ones that talk about, well, you know, we know who we're talking about. The other ones that say, but the globe and the planet and everything else. It's like,
well, that point was one of the last ones I got on my list to bring up, actually, and like I said, we're going to talk about emails in a minute, just quickly, but about email accounts. But
that'll be
it's a good one, right? So, but when you talk about you know, like we said, I refuse, and I might slip up now and again, but I refuse to use the terms. We call the first and ninth letter of the alphabet 19. I am not going to use that term that these knobheads...
No, say it, so people know. Because some people will...
First letter of...
What's he on about? I'll say it.
First,
AI.
About 10 years ago, I got the first SSD drive for the studio machine, and it says that drive learns and speeds up as time goes on, because it learns every time you log in and so on. Same thing, right? So because like a certain C of V word from 2020, I will not use the word that they used. I will always put the N in there. No. Right, and
but
so
people go, what the fuck are they on about?
Yeah, well, they know. Well, if you can't work out the first letter of the alphabet and the ninth, then you're obviously not even meant to be here in the first place, are you, right? Emails. Well, we're going to get onto emails. We can cut this bit out.
We've only had one glass of wine.
Well, I don't know about that. I think I've had about 6. What I was going to say was, there's a guy, right? I started watching a couple of other guys. Now, I know everybody's, you know, going to say, well, you spend all your time doing this. It's like, no, we don't. We actually, funnily enough, when the weather's bad or whatever, or it's like it's been appallingly hot like it has at the moment, when me and Mum have a cup of coffee, we watch a couple of things and so on. There's some people we really like, and there's some people that we used to like, and we sort of like, all right, and stop making the excuses for these clowns, you know. I don't like these bods that make excuses, you know. Oh, you got to feel sorry for them. It's like, no, you haven't, right? But anyway, there's one particular guy, and this is going back to the old giant boat that sank in the Atlantic, and he's a bit of a legend when it comes to this sort of stuff, right? He's been on a number of different shows. One guy that I was following for a little while, and then I got rid of him because, again, they sit there and they tell you that everything that the media and that the mainstream tells you is a lie, and then they use mainstream and media terminology, right? And it's like, no, you can't do that. You don't use it at all. You stick to your guns and you say, I'm going to call where we live Earth. I'm going to call it the world. I'm going to call it whatever, but I am not going to call it what these clowns want you to call it. And we watched over the weekend, I think between you, me and Mum, we watched, I think, about 6 or 7 films. And in every fucking film, right, was a fucking globe. Now, why do you think that was there? Every film had nobody has that in their house unless it's a drinks cabinet, right? That's because they're pushing this spinning ball BS, right? But for somebody that has written books about various subjects that make statements that say everything the authorities tell you is a lie, it's manipulated, whatever, but by the way, I believe what NASA's got to say. I'm sorry, I'm out, mate. I don't want to listen to you anymore because you're either not there or you're hired in. Sorry,
It's like the photograph. It's like the panoramic photograph I showed you from the Mars rover.
Ah, I was just going to talk about that. Brilliant.
For the Mars rover that showed the clearest blue sky on Mars.
Yeah.
Taken from the rover. It's like I might as well have been in my back garden with
Arizona.
the grass has died
Good
off.
shot in Arizona again.
Great shot in Arizona with a bit of photoshopped
God damn.
Silhouetted camera equipment from the rover. What a load of bollocks! I'm sorry.
Absolute rubbish.
What a load of, if anyone believes that was taken on Mars, then,
we can't help you. We cannot help you. That's another one, because we can talk about that another day, because I was talking to Mum about this, about why is it called the Red Planet, why all these movies made about this specific place. To end this one, let's talk about the email the email shenanigans, because that's yours as well, right?
Yeah. Go on, you start with yours, because I think it's really funny.
A little while ago, I decided it was time to get rid of some of these. I got rid of the websites, because, I was not going to prepared to pay $200 a year for a freaking website that no one goes to anymore. And then I had the artists at laforetgroup.com email, and we know that Billy Girl Gates really isn't the proprietor of Microsoft, it's just an actor, right, a bad one as well. But I was not prepared to give them any more money, right? So I told GoDaddy, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I didn't agree to it in the first place, so I got rid of it, right? So I created a couple of new email addresses, one through MailFence, which I'd never tried before, and one through Proton Mail. I've already had a couple of little disruptions through the MailFence one, where mails aren't coming through, they're bouncing back. Now, if you remember in my last our last chat, we talked about Mike Stock. I should be so lucky. Mike Stock, right? I'm never gonna give you up, right? A legend in songwriting of pop music, and he emailed me a number of times and I never got the email. It kept bouncing back, and I thought, well, that's weird. Why would that keep bouncing back? Nobody else's did. Mike Williams from the PSD channel didn't. Raf's doesn't bounce back, and so on. I thought that was a bit odd. So Mike Williams mailed me and said, Mike Stock has... too many Mikes. Mike Stock has said he's emailed you twice, it's bounced back. So I said, right, get him to email me on the Proton Mail one. Anyway, Mike emailed me. Great guy, totally open to everything that's going on. I mailed him back, and yet I haven't heard back from him. So I then took his email, which is an AOL email, and I forwarded it to MailFence, and that didn't go either. It's as if it was being blocked because of the content of the email account, right? Or the content of the sujet, the subject, right? Yeah. That's where we get into what you found out, right? So anyway, yesterday we went to this Mall Free, and Artur, a guy I'm working with who we've just done a song for, he emailed me. Now, he's been emailing me for about a month now, and he said it bounced back. Why did it bounce back? The email account is empty. There's nothing in it. There's no pictures, no saved giant files or anything like that. Are these email addresses also being compromised? And that was when you brought up the subject of how certain email accounts now, they're scanning them, and if you use certain words in them, they're not allowing you to send them, because it's like the YouTube thing with, no, you can't put that up there with that subject, right?
Yeah. It's like I told you with Temu.
Yes, there you go.
Sent things through my Gmail account through Temu, which are hooky, and I know they're hooky because if your bank, if you're sensible and you monitor things properly, and this is a big out to anybody that's out there. I'm not talking about really old people, but if you have older people in your family, you should make sure that if they do have access to all this online shit, that the best security is knowing what actually could be sent to you. Just because Tesco's, or as to say you've won something, or Temu sent me a thing to say I've won €3,500 worth of equipment through Temu. Really? I don't think so.
No.
Log on with your account details and your access, and we will send you your reward. No. It's like you said, corporations in a particular country. We've watched them.
Oh yeah. Well, there are scammers out there, but I also think when we looked at back in the day with the old antivirus software, the people that created the antivirus software were also creating the viruses. Otherwise, they wouldn't sell any gear.
Of course, they wouldn't make any money.
What I would say on this as well is like I said, I used the Wix free. I used to think it was being a bit of a cheapskate, but you can use the Wix free account to make a website looks really good. It's just got Wix above it, and I went over to that not because I didn't want to spend the money, but because it just became ridiculous to be spending, like I said, $200 a year plus the domain names and all this kind of stuff for something that nobody looked at. Same with the email accounts. It went from a free email account, which was brilliant for 20 years, to now paying $35 a year for it. And then the bastards turning around telling you now got to take a picture of yourself every time you log in. It's like, right, well, fuck you then. I'm out of there. I'm not going along with it. What I would say for that is that my profile is still there, but eventually it will disappear, because when I'm told that I need to give all this data to have something that I'm actually paying for in the first place, it's gone. It's over. And the only way you'll ever be able to contact me is either by carrier pigeon or by telephone, because I won't go along with it.
Yeah, good stuff.
But anyway, there's some interesting stuff there, and you did some great research on all that stuff. I mean, like we said, a thing about the old film thing is very, very interesting. And it's not just about the modern day films and all the other things that are coming out, and we've talked about this before, and there's many people, and some of our people that we follow talk about the films and all the other types of stuff, and the information that's there in plain sight. You just have to, like you said to me before, make a decision. And if we take this, I will always take it. We take this 10% rule. There is a reason why there are so many things now in our life that are there visibly with everything that we watch. They've always been there, but we've never identified them before. No.
That the more people, like some of my friends, as you know, that have become more observant to things. Now, are we changing their perception, their mentality, whatever? No. I think what's happening is that they understand that there's information that has been told to people for centuries that is a lie.
Yeah.
There's all these different things, and you have to. The way I look upon it now is that it's balance.
Oh yeah, everything's
here, don't they? Balance. There's a scale. Balance in France is the old seesaw. There's a balance. We're not talking about the scales. They call it seesaw. And you have to look at it and take the information the way you perceive it. And if you don't understand it, go and do a bit of research. Yeah. You can't turn around and say that's a load of bullshit if you don't research it. No. That's why I spent yesterday watching those two films and I watched 4 documentaries. Just for different information from both sides.
Oh, yeah.
You have to look at both sides. You can't just take one side.
No.
And that's where people go wrong with this stuff that we're talking about.
The next thing we're going to look into, and you pulled this up, and of course I'd already seen it and I thought it was quite funny. Very funny, actually. When we do because we'll end it on this one. When we do our next one, we're going to take a look into a certain tennis player. And you know the one I'm talking about, right? Okay, so we're going to look into this certain tennis player, and because we know that every single thing in the entertainment basis has been compromised, and I'm sure even including the golf. But we're going to look at not the golf the place, but the golf the game with a small white ball. But we're going to look into have a little look into this tennis player who is quite obviously a very interesting sujet, a very interesting subject, which you pulled up and you went, take a look at this, and I was like, I've seen that one, right? But is very prominent now. So anyway, we're going to end it on that one. Thanks for hanging out, and in the immortal words of Whisper Jack, we'll see you soon.
Yeah, respect to everyone out there listening. Thank you.